Good evening. I'm your host, Bruce Jackson, and here we're representing Gift House, and we're talking about a rather interesting topic today. Our guest is Dr. Redman, and Dr. Redman is a clinical psychologist, and he has a rather interesting analysis that he's done that he's going to share with us. Now, this may be a bit abrasive for some, but please bear in mind that it's not to offend or to belittle or set aside any beliefs, anyone's beliefs. What we're trying to do here is give you a pictorial view, a perspective of God. Yes, God. Today's topic, God's mistake. Dr. Redman.
Yes, hi, I'm Dr.
Pleasure
Redman.
having you here.
Thank you. My nonprofit organization is Catharsis Clinical Services. I work with people in south suburbs of Chicago, working with individuals, couples, families, for wide ranges of psychological and emotional issues, focusing more on trauma-based issues. And I thought that this topic would be really good to help people understand where potentially they're allowing themselves to be exploited by other men, which would be other men that work within the realm of religious education, whether they be ministers, whether they be church leaders, where ultimately they are leading individuals in a direction based on their agenda, based on their propaganda, where ultimately they are making money off of people that are just needing direction, where ultimately in the end, these people are still leaving empty, not only with empty wallets, but also empty hearts. And I thought it would be interesting, as well as very important and compelling, to get into a little bit at the beginning of the Old Testament in reference to the birth of Lucifer, as well as the other angels, his challenge of God's authority, and subsequent expulsion from paradise.
Well,
from
let's hear what you have.
Well, I'm referencing a quote, which is a passage from the Old Testament. It says, "Your heart was proud because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I exposed you before kings to feast their eyes on you. By the multitude of your iniquities, in the unrighteousness of your trade, you profaned your sanctuaries. So I brought fire out from your midst, and I consumed you. And I turned you to ashes on the earth in the sight of all who saw you. All of who you among the peoples are appalled at you. You have come to a dreadful end, shall be no more forever." Here, it's a very heavy reinforcement of Lucifer being abandoned as the extreme opponent of adulation he received previously. He defied, therefore, he was disgraced in that he rejected values he was expected to understand despite conditioning to a specific role, which was in servitude and reverence to his father. He was left to superficial assessment of values derived from a lack of proactive and ongoing parenting. There was swift and forceful justice by way of coercive propaganda and brainwashing, with humiliation and banishment as the consequence, exploited by narrow-minded concept of failure and demonized going forward in the unfolding of history. There is presence of God's being very defensive and prideful in his reluctance to concede this mistake of flaws within his own character. This led to a campaign to humiliate Lucifer based on his failure to live up to God's own expectations. Wouldn't this be like the proverbial father living vicariously through their son? Because of this failure, there is externalizing of God's own sense of failure and arrogant presumption, which leads Lucifer to serve as the guinea pig for the sake of this discussion, as the first child normally is resigned to be. In God's fear of being perceived as fallible, his own fear led to swift and decisive reactivity to prevent revolt of the other two-thirds of the angels with whom he still had the allegiance of. But for Lucifer to rally the one-third, he would suggest that he himself had a compelling argument and consistent supporting evidence. Put simply, he, like most children, wanting the approval as well as the subsequent trust of the father to take over, giving evidence that he was taught well. The problem is that he was taught too well, and it can be exceptionally discouraging if your father doesn't age and never dies, wherefore you can never take over and come into your own and show that degree of independence and capability. I kind of segue in, again, going back to how the ministers will cater to inspiring a degree of hope, but where they're very general and very much focused on a particular agenda or viewpoint within the scriptures, where they personally are interpreting it based on whatever their current circumstances are, whatever they're looking to accomplish within the the community-based religious organization they have. But where in the end you see them driving their expensive cars, you see them having very nice clothes and huge homes, but in the end you don't see anything really changing for the community that they serve. And so that's why then I suggest maybe we look at offering the community some way of thinking for themselves, interpreting, God and the scriptures as they will, based on allowing everyone to believe and reinforce the belief that everyone is capable of making their own determination of that.
Now let me ask this question. Is God perfect?
I don't believe God's perfect. The scriptures also refer to God creating mankind in his likeness. Well, clearly you see on the news every day, you see the way human behavior is satirized on entertainment programming, that human beings are flawed, human beings are far from perfect, to where then if that's the case, one would then have to consider if God himself is flawed and we are simply just a byproduct of a conception from his own being.
So God is not perfect, and man is not perfect. How then do we move forward?
Well, we move forward by just considering the rigidity and the propaganda of organized religions and the religious leaders behind organized religion, because if you consider throughout the annals of history, there's always been an angle where government and religious bodies work together for the sake of wishing to have a degree of control over the minds of the community. I'm looking at helping to free the minds of the community and help them to understand individually what their degree of faith will lead them to on their own.
Okay, because this is a big pill to swallow. Because we're saying here, in one breath, we're saying God isn't perfect. He made mistakes. That's how we got the double. That's how we got man. And you can go through the Bible, one mistake, one after the other. So we can see examples where the perfection isn't so.
Right.
Okay. Now, it's a big pill to swallow because for years, centuries, since the beginning of time, we've been taught God is perfect. So now we've come to the realization, right in the fork of the road, but you know what? He isn't. He isn't. And here it is right here. It was already right, present, smack right in front of us. We weren't paying attention. Now we're paying attention and we can see that he isn't. So we're going to swallow this pill now, and we're going to continue living life. But we have to live life with the concept in mind that God isn't perfect. Now we have to ask the question, is there a God?
Well, I believe God is a conception of faith. Everyone wants to believe that there is a celestial plan for us as a people, for the universe, that everything has a purpose. And do I personally believe that there's some sort of power outside of what our comprehension would allow us to believe? Yes, it's very difficult to believe the complexity of human nature, the complexity of this world, of all of the living organisms within it, that there would not be some sort of divinity outside of our realm of comprehension. But I believe any religious book that is written is more or less a means of helping human beings to have a comprehensible, tangible means of understanding why we are. And it is an ultimate human need to derive a sense of purpose. And I think, again, the methodology of organized religion has really kind of created a detriment to the evolution of human beings and allowing them to derive a sense of purpose. You have so many people that have such frustration, such turmoil, such complexity within their ability to make real sound decisions based on a huge degree of guilt, based on a huge degree of confusion, in that they feel like they're somehow falling short of the divinity that they're aspiring to reach, which is to try to be godlike, to try to be more like him so they can win whatever's supposed to come once human life, subsides, once whatever's next, comes their way. And I think the turmoil and the frustration and even some of the rage that you see in society nowadays comes from a lot of people just becoming beside themselves, becoming hopeless in feeling that it's easier just to give up and give in to impulse rather than to try to derive that sense of purpose and that sense of focus, because it's really just a matter of unrealistic expectations. If you aim too high outside of your own individual capabilities and your own individual skills, you'll miss the mark, and ultimately then the sense of failure leads people to just feel incredibly disenfranchised, and that's what I'm hoping to help people to understand, that they do not have to get to that point. They do not have to aim for expectations outside of the realm of what they can accomplish.
So, since we're talking about aiming for expectations, the expectations we're referring to, most of the times, people are trying to finish college, buy a home, start a business, they go to prayer. Right away, they go directly to prayer, and from prayer, they hope that God, with some kind of way, through his divine power, shine down upon them, and behold, whatever they were praying for, they're blessed with that particular trinket or whatever it was, and they can continue to live their life. And that is how one marks success, through their prayer. Well, if God isn't perfect, your prayer then wouldn't be perfect. Your request wouldn't be perfect. But at the same time, it still doesn't negate the fact that you would like to have some degree of success. And you would still want to reach certain goals, even if you are imperfect. Well, who then would you pray to, or who then would be your God? I mean, since God isn't perfect, how then, where would you find divinity?
Well, I think it would be a matter of everyone deriving a sense of deeper motivation within themselves. I think oftentimes there are a lot of people that do not push themselves hard enough because growing up they did not have the degree of support they needed around them, to where then therefore they had to believe in something they couldn't see, they couldn't smell, they couldn't touch. And there's a psychological concept called magical thinking, and I think a lot of people tend to do that. They feel that not only the things that they wish to have for themselves will just manifest if they wish hard enough, but that also in addition, if they make mistakes and they're being careless or they're being reckless because of maybe this degree of hopelessness they have, and the lack of focus because they're looking for something that they don't understand, then that ends up also being a means of people's own source of immunity for their own bad behavior. Well, mistakes is also part of the human experience, but if you do not consider all the variables within a particular set of circumstances, you're not going to have the best course of action that's going to allow you the success that you look for. Success is based on what your goal is, and people have a multitude of goals, a multitude of things that they try to reach at different milestones in their lives. And it's just really a matter of the sense of self, the sense of self-awareness, the ability to find inner strength, as well as, if you have not known what a real support system is, looking at determining what support means to you, and then looking to seek that out based on what your understanding of that is.
So you would have, these support systems, and we would address the concept almost of magical thinking, the term you used, in replace of what one would use when they're praying. You're magically praying for God to sweep in and pay your mortgage, or you're magically praying for God to sweep in and pass your exam so that you can graduate from college, or you're magically praying for God to appear and cure your loved one from some God-forsaken illness. That's the magical thinking syndrome, right? Well, if we're looking, I guess the term would be trying to find God within you. If God, and I say this, if God isn't perfect, and God made you, and you're not perfect, then it's safe to say that if you're looking in the mirror, you're looking at God.
In a way, yes, because your source of faith, your source of confidence, your source of trust should be within you. So then it's good that we're getting into this territory, because then we can go ahead and discuss materials that I've been working on for some time that pertain to helping people to understand how to find hope in themselves, how to find direction within themselves, how to believe in themselves, so that way then they can find their own path and derive a sense of what God means to them to lift them up enough to be able to get where they want to go without trusting another human being that's just as flawed as them, that is going to drain them financially for the sake of doing what is more conventional or societally acceptable.
And when you say trusting another individual that may drain one financially, you're referring to the church?
Whatever church a person may go to as a means of finding this degree of structured, institutional, faith giving.
And when we think about the church, the first thing you think about, the thought that crossed your mind, is that God doesn't need any money.
Right.
We're not supposed to need any money.
Right.
But I can't recall, well, maybe if you could recall one, a church that exists without any revenue.
Right, and I think that's really the key, is that you're going to a man-made structure where a man and a support system of other men, and this could be men or women, I mean that broadly, there are material needs that they have to be able to fulfill. You have to keep the lights on. You have to be able to allow for the property to exist, so that way people can go. You have to consider that the minister, as well as the staff, they have their own, physical needs, material needs. Their families, are in need of material support. We are human beings. We are physical beings, so we have physical needs. And so then that, of course, is where the money comes in. But the point of this conversation is that there's alternatives. You don't have to solely look at finding an individual or an individual entity where they're directing you in a particular way or direction as to what you should believe.
Now, let's say typical John Q. citizen. He's watching this program right now. He says, okay, I've been paying the church money for the lion's share of my life, and I'm about 45 years of age. And now I have given 10%, if not more, percent of my income to the church over 40 years. My life hasn't improved. It's not significantly better. It's not significantly greater. For the most part, John Q. citizen lives a pretty relatively average life. Taking on this new perspective, because it would be a new perspective for him.
Sure.
Taking on this new perspective, what do you do? Do you, when you embrace this program, you're saying would pray to himself, or are we going to introduce him to starting his own business?
I would look at helping him to derive a sense of independence and industriousness. So I think really it would be a matter of helping him to understand things that have not been explained to him, things that have not been introduced to him, that largely would be upon himself to invest in investigating, where then he can be completely stable and autonomous and feel like he is actually doing for himself rather than looking for other people to direct him.
So let me just put this out there, and you correct me if I'm wrong. If you're watching this program and you have been going to church, and it doesn't matter what church you're going to, you
No.
could be Catholic, Muslim, whatever denomination or faith, it doesn't matter. If you've been going to a institutional religion for the lion's share of your life and saw nothing significantly has changed in your life, and now you're looking to make a significant change, then call the number on the screen and give yourself a chance. Give yourself a chance and see if you can improve your life. See if you can improve your life by making significant changes. This would impact your business. If you're a student, it would impact your school. If you are a homemaker, it would impact your home. But you would not allocate any more money to an outside source in some faraway, distant, I guess some distant heaven that you've never seen, and that you have to literally have to die, leave this earth to go there. You'll be making an investment right here and now for your family, yourself, and your loved ones to benefit from. Is that an accurate?
I'd say that's very accurate. You saying, the investment, week after week, year after year, and expecting that whatever divine reward you get in the end is going to be the payoff for you. Well, there's a greater chance of somebody playing the lottery and expecting to win than paying money to a church and expecting that's going to give them a guaranteed seat in heaven. So ultimately, we're going back to, the sense of purpose, the sense of being able to feel like one is accomplishing things for them. A fundamental need of all human beings is self-efficacy, to be able to take care of oneself, to be able to feel capable of meeting one's needs. And within teaching a person that, you also teach them how to support themselves, as well as where they can pass on to their children, work with their wife or their husband or other family members, demonstrating a more comprehensive degree of support, where then that will also create ripples to where the fabric of individual experience, the fabric of family, will incredibly be enhanced.
Well, I think we touched on everything that I'd like to share with you. Is there anything that I may have missed out on, or that I didn't touch on that you'd like to bring out?
No, I think it's just a matter of being realistic to reinforce to the viewing public that this is not something that happens overnight, that this would be the first step in investing to a new degree of understanding for a person to be able to then expand their horizons and see there's another way, a way that they can actually take upon themselves, take the proverbial bull by the horns and really do something different. And as long as they're willing to have patience and dedication within themselves, then ultimately this is going to be something that can pan out for each individual person.
Now, how do you handle the naysayers? The sayers that says, what, you're going to burn in Hades and you're going to go there by express.
Well, I would say to them, everybody wants to have an opinion about something, and so with that, they have their right to their perspective. But ultimately, depending on the degree of intensity of the response that I got, I would ask them, is the degree of hostility from a place of fear because you're being very defensive in that potentially what we're speaking of is poking holes in the fabric of what they believe, and that makes them nervous. And ultimately, there we go back to the concept of fear. If one is nervous, they're afraid. It is, very much human to be afraid of difference, to be afraid of change. Again, human history is full of a lot of intensity, a lot of negativity coming from some means of change. That's really the best way to address that.
If you're watching this program and you're looking for some real change in your life, and you've done your prayer, and it's not to belittle prayer or put it down, but you've prayed. You know what it's like to pray, and you know what it's like to not to get the results you're looking for. If you're looking for real results, call the number at the bottom of the screen. Talk to one of our handlers that will answer the phone for you, and we will make sure that we get you to help you develop your business, help you get on track to get to the level of success you need to be. There's nothing wrong with prayer. You just got to find the God in you.